in fact, I'd be very surprised if it doesn't happen by this year end. You know, we all think of anniversaries. We remember October 1987, for example. I think the sort of psychology of it is that we all go on holiday in the summer, going out with the children and beach holidays and, you know, whatever. And you don't think too much about markets. But when you get back, you have quarterly committee meetings, investment committee meetings in all the big firms. They'll be sitting there and they'll be looking and seeing how they have performed. They see what they have missed, and they'll be looking at gold and mines, and they'll be looking at the Magnificent Seven, and they'll be looking at macro risk and trying to take a judgment on that. And I think on balance, that's why you suddenly get a vacuum underneath the market in the last quarter of the year, if it's going to happen. This is, I think, a very dangerous time from that point of view. Now, let me just say something about the credit bubble. We all know credit bubbles precede a collapse in markets. They fuel markets and then you get the collapse. Going back, you had tulipomania in Holland way back in the, I think, 1700s. You had the Mississippi bubble in France, which was actually very similar to this one. But at the same time, you had the South Sea bubble in the UK. And this was all done on credit, incidentally. It was the beginning of the goldsmiths, sort of, if you like, invented modern British banking. At that time, they found people would deposit their gold with them. And before long, certificates evidencing gold being deposited at a reliable goldsmith were changing hands in a form of payment. So it was the forerunner of checks. And it was expansion of credit that did all this. So you get a credit expansion that fuels a market, and then you get the collapse. Now, in 1929, we had the Roaring Twenties, credit expansion. But the other thing we had the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act right at the top of the market, dated 1930. It was originally examined by Congress in late 1929 or mid-29, and then passed to the upper house, which finally approved it, and it was signed into law by President Hoover in 1930. So we had the combination of the popping of a credit bubble and the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. Now, what have we got today? We've got a far larger credit bubble. You know, we don't know where we are with these damn tariffs. I mean, we know that we've got the damn things, but you've got a capricious president who keeps on changing his mind and threatening whoever he doesn't like at that particular moment with 100% tariffs or whatever. Mm-hmm. This is very disruptive and not to be ignored. So we've got a very similar situation to 1929. I don't need to remind everybody that the stock market collapsed. It lost 90% of its value. 10,000 banks went out of business, which was actually why money supply contracted, because money supply contracts basically when credit is extinguished by...
Right.
It led to the end of the old gold standard in 1934 rather, at 20.67, which persisted all the way since the mid-1800s. That was major. This one is bigger. It is bigger than 1929, and we got exactly the same thing. So, Andy, the thing is that when you're in a bubble like this, if you're a professional fund manager, you are managing other people's assets, and you get into trouble if you're not playing the game. Look, the S&P's gone up 300% or whatever the figure is. And what have you done?
Right.
You know, you had me sitting in bonds which have gone down.
Right.
You know, I sack you.
Yeah.
You know, you have this self-perpetuating factor, if you like, in the bubble.
Do you see the EU and the euro more or less going away over the next several years? Is this the beginning of the end, if you would, with that?
Yeah, I think I would sort of broaden it a bit and say as I said earlier, this is the end of the fiat currency system. And the euro is the poster child for the euro currency system. You know, right. It is an invention. It's not just a fiat currency. It's been constructed on the basis that the past doesn't matter. And what I mean by that is that if you have a currency like sterling or even the old Deutschmark or whatever, it has a history. And it's sort of accepted by the people that use it on the basis of its history. The euro started off literally in the year 2000. It's now been going for 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you might think that that's quite enough history, but actually, when push comes to shove, that I think is going to be tested. In any event, it's issued by a bank, a central bank, which is owned by all the other central banks. And I would say that it's quite important that the ECB actually is itself deeply in negative equity. If it was a private corporation, the directors would be in jail. It's something which doesn't matter until it matters. Let me put it that way. Let us assume now, and I think this is a very reasonable assumption, that the most major economies are stalling and likely to go into recession. Some of them are already definitely in recession. And if you're unkind enough to actually do the arithmetic on GDP and strip out budget deficits to leave a genuine reflection of private sector activity, private sectors in virtually all the major economies are in recession already. In other words, their GDP is contracting. Mm-hmm. The idea that we've got any growth at all, I mean, the whole thing is a misnomer. Anyway, it's growth in credit, not quite how it's deployed, which is another factor which is too depressing to go into. But I think that we are already, if you like, going into recession. Now, what this does is it makes it even harder to sustain the increasing level of government debt, because government debt depends on the ability of the government to finance it. Mm-hmm. If it's got a high level of debt, if it requires yet more debt, and if the private sector is contracting, then the revenue base is contracting, and therefore debt becomes less affordable. This is reflected in the risk which debt holders, bondholders, will require compensation for in order to continue to hold or to buy new debt. And this is why yields are rising out along the yield curve. It's a reflection of debt traps, if you like. Ugly phrase. Doom loop is another one, if you like, doing the same thing. All major governments are in that position.
That's the thing is, and not to interrupt you, but that's the thing is like, I don't see really the way out of this for all governments because of the level of debt that they have to print. I mean, when I say have to print, they don't have to print, but theoretically they don't. But the reality is they do in order to get out of it, correct? And that's where your currency crisis comes in as well.
That's correct. I mean, governments have taken upon themselves not only to be the lenders of last resort to the banking system, to underwrite the banking system, but to the whole economy. Because apart from anything else, they can't afford the welfare costs of massive unemployment. So that is a real problem for them. And you're right. They have got to, if you like, create the credit in order to fund the whole caboodle. Now, the Fed has started doing this. It's gone for the reflation rather than controlling inflation, which is going to undermine the purchasing power of the dollar. That is absolutely clear. And I think other governments are going to follow. So, yes, you're absolutely right. And that is what I mean by we're now coming to the end of the fiat currency system, because we're going to see bond yields rise. You know, the idea of 15.5% bond yields, coupons on long treasuries. In fact, that was a medium-dated treasury. It was a 12-year maturity. And not only that, but, if you ask me, but surely, will it stop there? I say, no, I don't think necessarily. The only thing that will stop it is a sort of Volcker-like approach. Jack up the rates as much as necessary and to hell with the consequences. And it requires government to basically back off from its liabilities and say, look, we can't afford it. You guys in the private sector, it's your problem. Imagine it in any nation.
Of course. Yeah.
It's just not on now. It really is not.
Yeah.
The only nations which really don't have this problem, I think, are China and Russia. Russia's being cut out of it, so she should be quite grateful in a sense. Though right. I don't think that's quite how they look at it. And in China, I think that the level, the same with Russia, the level of welfare support is actually extremely low. And I think they more readily embrace unemployment or shifts in employment without government intervening. I mean, as I understand it, in China, it's very much a gig economy, and if the jobs aren't there, you just go home and till the fields, sort of thing. It's a bit like that.